It started as a dare. You know, it was one of those once in a lifetime kind of things. I was having a conversation with some friends and we were talking about bucket list. I heard myself say, totally, I would definitely jump out of an airplane. Now, first off, I can't believe that I actually said the word totally, but apparently I did. And then 3 weeks later, I'm in a very large room with a lot of people, with a couple of my friends, and I have on a jumpsuit. And while I was standing there, this young man came up to me. Now, he was way too young and much too bubbly. And he said, "Look, I'm going to be your jump master." He was the person who was going to jump with me. So I was reaffirmed again that this indeed was going to be a tandem jump. I was not going to do a solo jump. But this guy was just way too young. He told me about a few things that I needed to know, and then he escorted me to the plane. We got on the plane, and he told me a little bit about himself. I told him a little bit about myself as our plane was climbing and going to our jump spot. Now, this next part is just going to sound way, way too dramatic, but I just don't know any other way to tell you. At a certain point, as we are approaching, um, he stood up behind me. He stood behind me way too close. He stood up behind me kind of like, well, like this was the third date and that we were slow dancing. He was way too close. And then he put his arm around my waist and he pulled me into himself even closer. And during all of this time, he is now latching the latches on his harness with the ones on my harness so that we are now connected together. And then he tugs and he checks. He tugs and he checks and he tugs and he checks just to make certain that all of the latches are there correctly. We start moving toward the door, and he whispers into my ear, "Do you remember what you're supposed to do?" I said, "Yes." And then he said, "Are you ready?" Now, I don't remember a lot of things, but I do strictly remember that I said no. And then we kept moving toward the door. And again, I don't always remember a lot of things, but I remember this. He asked me again, "Are you ready?" And I said, no. And then he asked me again, "Are you ready?" And this time, I don't even remember answering. What I remember is that we were now outside of the plane and we are 13,000 feet up in the air. I did say no, but we are 13,000 feet up in the air. I can feel the wind going through my jaws as we are free falling 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet. It is cold, it is loud, this is fast, and it is wrong because I said no. And then, well, whoosh, the parachute opened. Now, I don't know how to explain to you exactly what this was like. It was kind of like I was being yanked back into my body after I died. Now, I don't know where that metaphor came from, but it seems to work right now because it was a powerful experience of what happened when that parachute opened. And what it did is it slowed our descent down, and we are now slowly coming down. My jump master whispered into my ear again, and he said, "Now remember to look out over the landscape." I said, no, I can't be looking out of the landscape. I need to make certain that this parachute is working because I need to make certain that I'm going to survive because I'm not supposed to be out here right now. But at a certain point, I decided, well, go ahead and take a look. And I'm so glad that I did because it was absolutely beautiful. I could see the curvature of the earth. I could see the incredibly beautiful blue horizon. I could see all the patchwork of the green grass that was below us. It was absolutely beautiful. And at a certain point, I just let go. I don't mean I let go of the parachute because I was never letting it let go of that parachute at all. I let go in my head and just allowed myself to actually have this experience. But just for a moment, because it was time to get back to work. Because then at a certain moment, he said, "All right, make certain that you raise your legs as we get closer to the ground." I did this as though I have been practicing this forever and a day. I raised my legs, and then we hit the ground. Thud! And we slid across the ground. And as we came to a stop, I tell you, my helmet was now askew a little bit. My heart, because of all the adrenaline, was up in my mouth someplace. I could tell you that the harness of my parachute was all tangled up and I was kind of leaning over to the side. But as we came to a stop, the only thing that I could think to say at that moment was, can we do it again? That's my story.